how did it happen that extreme right-wing got so many votes in the presidential elections in Romania? Because it is known that he had less than 10% of the votes last time.
So what we are witnessing right now in Romania is the result of a years-long process of shifting public debates towards the right and towards the far right. We have been seeing an increase, a tremendous increase in the far right narratives, in Russian disinformation, in anti-Ukraine sentiment and anti-Ukraine narratives in our public sphere in the past few years. It started with the COVID pandemic, where we have witnessed a surge in disinformation, in digital disinformation and anti-West narratives. It has continued with the war in Ukraine. And what we are witnessing in this candidate that has won the first round of the presidential elections is that we have really seen that the narratives that we have been already used to seeing and that have been existing not just on the fringes of social media, not just in fringe media altogether, but also on mainstream media as well, on the public news, on the news channels. Sorry, not public, on mainstream news channels that are among the most watched television news networks in our country. And we have seen the result of that. What we are really looking at Călin Georgescu and his and the narratives that he's adopting, it's the fact that you have anti-EU, anti-West, anti-NATO, anti-Ukraine, pro-Russian narratives that all fall under this umbrella of pro-neutrality, which is essentially this toxic pacifism, this idea that when it comes to this conflict in Ukraine, that we have to, that if we will stay out of it and that if we are neutral in this conflict, that we will be protected, that we will be safe. This is not our conflict. This is not something that we should be involved in. And as a country, we have a lot to lose if we do get involved in. And looking at the fatigue with the war in Ukraine and at the existent already, even before the war, for many years, anti-Ukraine sentiment in Romania, you just start to see all of these narratives and all of this disinformation getting bigger and bigger roots and becoming more and more normalized. So we had the Our Party 5 years ago, almost 5 years ago. They participated in the election just months after they were formed. And they managed, even then, to get a reasonable result, a reasonably big enough result in the parliamentary elections, which was not expected then. You can see a parallel with what we are looking at right now. When they received this result, even though they were formed just a few months before, they had a social media campaign. You cannot compare it to the social media campaign that we witnessed in the past few weeks with Călin Georgescu and the Pot Party. But you could see that this anti-system, this anti-establishment sentiment that is fairly legitimate in Romania, given where we are in terms of developing and in terms of the living conditions in Romania, again, this anti-establishment sentiment is legitimate. But we haven't really had a candidate like Călin Georgescu to really get on this wave of anti-establishment sentiment and really become so successful in turning himself as this sort of savior of the country, as this sort of anti-system hero image that he's really trying to project. So we have seen an evolution, a progress from anti-West narratives all the way to where we are right now, with neutrality being one of his biggest selling points in his campaign. So from my perspective as a researcher, I see it as a natural phenomenon. It was meant to happen. You have a lot of experts in Romania, a lot of sociologists and psychologists and political scientists saying that, oh, this came out of nowhere. This is a big surprise to us. But to researchers who have been looking at social media in particular and the far right groups acting on social media, this is no surprise, unfortunately.
We saw the decision of Constitutional Court to recount the votes, but the protests are still intense. Does this mean that the decision of the Constitutional Court will not be respected?
Well, the protests and the Constitutional Court's decision are not necessarily as connected as they may appear. A big part of the protests happening in Bucharest that have been happening in the past few weeks, in the past few days actually, after the first round of the elections, are anti-extremist protests. They are anti-Călin Georgescu and anti-AUR and SOS and POT, the so-called anti-fascist protests going on in Bucharest. They are essentially a peaceful protest. No injuries, no major disruptions have been reported on. Now, when it comes to the protest, I expect that they will continue. I hope that they will remain just as peaceful. I hope that they will not be disrupted. It has happened before with other protests. Unfortunately, hopefully things will remain calm. But again, the situation is very volatile at this point. So
What
we are
is
not sure yet as to where this is going.
what is the reaction of European Union?
Well, the European Union and European leaders have tried to stay as much publicly, vocally out of this as possible. They're probably trying to see how this will play out, how the decisions will come in. What they did do was to call for a TikTok commission. They have advanced a request for information under the DSA with TikTok. TikTok appears to be cooperating, and I think released a statement saying that they are cooperating with the EU and with Romanian authorities as much as they can because they want to remove any kind of speculation regarding their practices on TikTok and what happened, this very unnatural campaign with what we call bots and troll farms. And how do you explain in short term this artificial inflation of Călin Georgescu numbers? I think that I saw that he, on some of his posts, he had more likes than Donald Trump. So if you can imagine how something like that would happen, a public figure that has been relatively unknown to the general public in Romania, let alone internationally, to have bigger numbers than the president of the United States. So some explanations need to be given here, and we still need to get to the bottom of what happened on TikTok and on social media altogether. That being said, we cannot limit our explanations on what is happening right now to TikTok. It's very easy to blame TikTok for what happened and say that people are manipulated and that's why they voted. And this is something very dangerous that you have mainstream parties doing right now. They are saying that, oh, his voters, they're just, they were manipulated via social media. They're not as intelligent as our supporters because look what they have fallen for. They fell in this trap, essentially. And I don't think that galvanizing his supporters further is a smart strategy, and it's wrong altogether. I don't think that Călin Georgescu voters are necessarily pro-Russia. Most of them are not, or they are just enchanted by this candidate that came out of nowhere. They have voted, so many of them, they voted against the system. They voted against the same parties that have been ruling this country for 35 years now, and they want change. And nobody really promised change in the way that Călin Georgescu did. That does not, legitimize their option, does not legitimize the other side either. But this is the statement of the fact. This is where we are right now. This anti-system sentiment is so high among Romanians that we have found ourselves in this very difficult situation, really.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.